You have also touched upon about the shift in appointments in higher judiciary and the current collegium system, which you say was not envisaged in the original constitution.
The Chief Justice had only the status of a consultee, which meant that his opinion could be accepted or could be rejected, recommending the candidate to the central government, insisting that their appointee should, their candidate should be appointed. If the government sent it back once, on the second occasion, government had to accept it. And all this was rewriting the constitution and creating a new constitution for the appointment of judges.
Hello and welcome to The Print. I'm Ruchi Bhattar and today we are joined with someone special. We have with us today Mr. K.K. Venugopal, Supreme Court Senior Advocate and former Attorney General for India. Sir is joining us today for a very remarkable moment in his life. He has penned down an autobiography, which is, of course, a book on his career, but also a deeply personal account on life, his adventures, and his relationships. Thank you so much, sir, for taking out the time and speaking to The Print. I'll start with the first question, sir, very eminently. Why do you call yourself an accidental lawyer, and why was law not the first choice for you, given that your father, Mr. Nambiar, was an eminent lawyer in his time?
No, but it's not that when I started my BSc, I could possibly conceive of a career in law at all. My father at that time had just started his career as an eminent constitutional lawyer. And it was only later that he built up a huge practice all over the country. Therefore, the choice among all of us, my siblings, had nothing to do with law. It's only when he attained that position and I had failed in my BSc, the thought suddenly struck him. Look, I don't have a lawyer in the family. Therefore, should we not have somebody who can follow me in the profession? It is then that the failure came to my advantage because he decided that I will not continue with science and I would take to law. That's how I became a lawyer and an accidental lawyer.
We're so glad that happened as an accident as well, sir. In your book, a central theme is how times have changed from back then to now. You speak about relationships changing, and you have seen the entire Supreme Court change over the last 7 decades. Now we have live streaming instead of the restricted access to the court. We now have judges from non-metropolitan backgrounds as well. From your vantage point, sir, how important is this shift constitutionally and culturally for the institution?
See, you would be surprised to know that the teaching of law in the 1950s was purely the communication of material by a lecturer to the students. He had no other experience from being in a classroom. But today the teaching of law has gone through dramatic changes. You find that there are moot courts, there are seminars, there are libraries which are open throughout the night where you get attendance for sitting in the library in the middle of the night and working on on the textbooks. Then I have found students sitting in the lawns with a laptop and downloading material from all over the world in regard to from the universities in other countries as well. Now, this means that so far as the teaching of law is concerned, it has gone through a dramatic change. We students of 1952 and 53, mind you, it is about 70 years back, we had only what we would call, we were using the dukis. Dukis were summoned on jurisprudence of 250 pages was reduced to 60 pages.
Okay.
And if I studied the Duki fully, I would get excellent marks and I would pass. But today, if I use a Duki, then I am afraid that I would get very, very little marks. I may even fail.
You have appeared before some of the most formidable judges of the Supreme Court. Is there something that has stuck with you, perhaps something humorous or deeply instructive that you got from the other side, which has still stayed with you till date?
See, I remember a case as a young lawyer with 3 years practice. I used to come to the Supreme Court for arguing motor vehicle cases. It was a highly specialized field, and therefore my clients were prepared to pay for my airfare, pay for my hotel, and ask me to and give me a small fee to argue the case in the Supreme Court. Now, at the same time, I remember a case from Calicut where a father was a highly specialized country doctor,
Okay.
and he Ayurvedic, and he said that so far as the vaccine to be given for smallpox, they had some treatment of their own, and therefore he would not touch the smallpox vaccine because that was extracted from a cow. The result of it was that he filed a case and insisted upon his right not to give the smallpox vaccine. Now, he briefed me, and I went to the Supreme Court. And I stood up when the case was called. And instead of listening to me very seriously, the judges were all among themselves quite amused, and they were laughing. And they could not even conceive of stopping a smallpox vaccine and then going for the alternative of Ayurveda, which, according to them, would be ineffective or would not stop smallpox throughout the country.
When you look back at the lawyers you practiced alongside with in your years, so do you see a barroom culture that has changed today? And could you tell us some things from your barroom culture that today young lawyers would find really surprising?
No, but so far as this is concerned, the culture which a lawyer should have is to do justice to his case. Two, to study the brief thoroughly. Three, to research sufficiently so that he always keeps up to date with the latest decisions on the particular subject which he is handling. Therefore, so far as this is concerned, this is the culture which a lawyer should always emulate. Now, I do not think that all lawyers would follow this culture because today I do not know whether all the lawyers, which would include me perhaps, were more fond of the money which the profession generates rather than handling pro bono cases or sitting and studying a case thoroughly before without wasting any time. And therefore, my personal feeling is that we may today have, or the profession may have degenerated to a little extent, where one was more concerned about the remuneration with the practice of law brought in. I'm not saying that as a general rule, but perhaps in some cases.
So, since you talked about pro bono cases, you also have a chapter in the book regarding which is a note to young lawyers, which is a very wise note to young lawyers, in which you mention that lawyers should take up more of public causes in terms of public interest litigations and continue doing that. Why do you think it's important as lawyers, professionals, which you also call them as social engineers, to continue doing such public interest litigations?
See, looking back, my personal feeling is that public interest cases were a huge area of deprivation of the rights of the people is brought to the focus of the Supreme Court or the High Courts. It brings in a tremendous amount of benefits. Unlike individual cases, where you go and say this land of mine has been taken away, or this rent control case has resulted in high rents, and therefore, or that my landlord is trying to evict me. Public interest litigation falls into a totally different category. And I remember Churchill saying after the war that never before in the history of man has so much been done by so few people for so many, dealing with or mentioning about by the pilots who lost their lives in the Second World War. Therefore, similarly, the public interest litigation has done tremendous good across the flow, across the complete scheme of litigation. And I think it is something which is very good because it brings benefit to not one individual but to a huge community.
Absolutely. In your book, you also mentioned that you reflect on how relationships have changed you. Particularly, you say that, and I quote, that the world has changed and one has to adapt if one wants peace of mind. This is in context to you referring to your relationship with your parents, to your relationship with your Gen Z and millennial grandchildren, sir. How have they shaped your broader outlook on life, and how do you see them?
See, so far as the relationship between a parent and the children in the 1930s and 40s, because I was born in 1931, it was something where there was no overt show of affection and love. Though, indubitably, there was the same level of love existing between the parents and the children as that exists today. But there is no question of a parent hugging the children and all that during my time as a young guy. But it's only when I came to Delhi, I found a parent hugging the children or a friend hugging whether it's a female, a man hugging the female or vice versa, whatever it is, or men hugging each other. This became something very common. And therefore, that could never happen when I was 10 years, 20 years, 30 years old. But today, my son or my daughter-in-law, when they go abroad for a holiday, they first come and hug me before leaving, and that is something new to me. But I think it's wonderful. I love it.
Also, sir, you deeply mention in your book about your relationship with your grandchildren, and how, like, there are anecdotes of them not even asking you before taking out the liquor from your cabinet. It's a very funny anecdote that I found. Could you tell us more about the relationship that you share with your grandchildren today and
You
how it
see,
shapes you today?
the grandchildren, they love me. I love my grandchildren. But they belong to a totally different class. When my father asked me to do something, or my grandfather asked me to do something, I don't question it. I straight away say yes, and I do it. But today they don't say yes straight away. They consider it, decide whether they have to agree or not, and they tell me bluntly, I'm sorry. And they don't do it. But what can I do?
Also, moving to the more fascinating aspect of your book is about the love for travel that you show. So, you traveled to the North Pole at the age of 81. And you also speak about your travel to Antarctica. You also speak about your adventures that you took for a photograph that turned out risky later. How did you, with such a demanding legal career, have the time and, was it of interest that you thought you had the time and you had to put out the time for? How did you find the time for it?
See, my running from the elephant was something which should never have happened. In fact, before we started on our tour around the world, my father sent for my wife, who was 10 years younger than me. And he told her, look, so far as Venu is concerned, he is sometimes very, very rash. And therefore, I am depending upon you to keep an eye on him and prevent him from doing anything rash. Now, he didn't know that She had very little control over me. She was 10 years younger. And of course, during those days, the women were far more, perhaps, not very, very opposed to the husband's actions or views. Therefore, it is on that basis that we started traveling. For when I saw an elephant with his tongue, with his tusk sticking out, I told her, you use a Super 8 camera, and from the top of the vehicle, where you could bind a window aside, you please take the picture. I'll just stand next to the vehicle. Now, she should have said no, but she didn't, because she believed and she had total trust and faith in what I was doing. I don't know if it's because it's a Hindu wife or otherwise. And therefore, so far as she is concerned, she started taking the picture. I went a little closer to the elephant, and the elephant was still behind the creepers. Therefore, I clapped my hand, and the elephant, it just came running towards me. Took quite a few steps. Therefore, I didn't know what was happening. I turned and fled, and jumped into the front seat of the vehicle. Now, the elephant had gone back and was feeding on the creepers. Now, this, I think, a wife would normally say, don't do this, and anything can happen, and I won't take a movie. And then that would have stopped me. But she didn't say so. And that, I think, is the highlight of our relationship.
Sir, also moving forward to like the work-life balance question, many young lawyers today struggle with the kind of culture that law creates as a profession. Did you ever feel like a balance was not struck between your life and your career? And what advice would you give to young lawyers to cultivate interests outside of the profession as well, like you did?
See, I think you would do very well in the profession if you took off time also during the vacation periods. Now, today, I would say, and if you compare it to the past, travel was very difficult in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. No foreign exchange was available. At the most, they gave you $100 for going around the world. You could not even step out of the country with $100. Therefore, people, of course, knew the methods by which they could acquire monies abroad. Now, and their communications were very difficult, and therefore hotel bookings. All this was very difficult during the early years when I was traveling, that is in the 60s and 70s. But today, if you go abroad, you will find in every single airport a lawyer from the Supreme Court of India. That is the ease with which travel has become. Now, I remember when I went abroad and all that, I would watch a bullfight and take Super 8 camera movies. When I came back to my Rotary Club, they would want the entire pictures regarding this, what is that, the bull ring and the taming of the bull, killing of the bull, dragging it through by the horses out of the arena. All this was very exciting, and my Rotary Club would say, please exhibit it. Today, nobody is bothered. You may go anywhere, see the, what do you call that, the lights,
Northern Lights.
the Northern Lights. And you came back and said, oh, I've seen the Northern Lights. And they would just ignore it because they had already seen it much earlier. That's the ease with which Indians are traveling nowadays.
You have also touched upon about the shift in appointments in higher judiciary and the current collegium system, which you say was not envisaged in the original constitution. You have also said that there is a need to revisit it by a higher bench, a larger bench rather. What are the problems that you see in the current system and efficacies of it? Why do you raise doubts regarding it? And what could be a possible alternative, in your opinion?
See, first of all, what the original constitution said was in Article 124 that the President of India, which means the government of India, will appoint the judges to the higher judiciary in consultation with the Chief Justice of India. Now, which meant that so far as the actual selection of the candidates, then the recommendation to appoint them would all be by the central government and not by the judges. The Chief Justice had only the status of a consultee, which meant that his opinion could be accepted or could be rejected. Now look at the change which has taken place. All through mere judicial interpretation or misinterpretation, according to me, of Article 124 of the Constitution. Now, the entirety of the selection of the candidates, then recommending the candidate to the central government, insisting that their appointee should, their candidate should be appointed. If the government sent it back once, on the second occasion, government had to accept it. And all this was rewriting the constitution and creating a new constitution for the appointment of judges. Now, I would think that what the NJSC wanted to do was excellent. And strangely, both the ruling party and the opposition, all of them agreed unanimously, except for one dissent, and that was of Ram Jethmalani. That means the whole of the Rajya Sabha, the entirety of the Lok Sabha had agreed. Now, that is the one which has been struck down. According to me, that is wholly unjustified. There are three judges of the Supreme Court. There is one law minister, two eminent persons. If three judges agreed, and they would normally stand united, they could have dropped one eminent person. Therefore, it would always be 3:2. The judges would have their way. Then why on earth was it struck down? And the result of the Collegium, you find it has been criticized on all sides. There was a dissent by one of the judges of the Constitution Bench, Justice Kurian, who agreed with the majority. He later said, if I had known this was what is going to happen, I would never have agreed. And so far as Justice Rumapal is concerned, in a subsequent article, she said, she was on the Collegium. She condemned that, saying it is a question of you pat my back, I will pat your back. Or tell me who your candidate is, I will tell you my candidate. That's both. Therefore, this is not good.
Right. Getting deeper into your book, sir, you have been involved in some of the most politically significant cases. The Babri Masjid episode, the 1984 riots, and even the emergency. Yet you say that being a lawyer, it is better to be not involved politically in the case, to not pick a side in the case. How?
See, being involved politically is different from agreeing with a particular political party and becoming a member. I remember in Tamil Nadu, when lawyers were enrolled, straight away they decided which is a political party which is likely to be in power, in which event they will get a chance of becoming a government pleader or a public prosecutor and so on. Now they are wedded to that party for life. Now I have always been keeping myself away from a political party, but any number of political parties have come to me to appear for them. And for example, the MGR, Jayalalitha, then even Karunanidhi, all of them. Similarly, I have mentioned a number of cases of chief ministers from the north for whom I have been appearing, like Arjun Singh and S.M. Krishna, and so on. Therefore, I have appeared for against S.M. Krishna, and later, when he wanted my help with his Karwad, with when he wanted with a very big case, I appeared for him. Similarly, with who was the other one? With Arjun Singh. I appeared against him and succeeded in a case which was highly sensitive. But later he came to me and I appeared for him. Therefore, which showed that politics had nothing to do with my appearing for one or the other.
And how do you see the professional independence in terms of very politically sensitive cases? How do you see a lawyer's independence in court?
See, I would rather that they did not commit themselves to a particular political party, but appeared for a political party whenever called upon. And that would be the independence which a lawyer should demonstrate.
So, in the Mandal Commission chapter, you say that you decided never to appear against the rights conferred on the disadvantaged sections in society by the Constitution. Similarly, in the Babri Masjid episode, you refused to appear for Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister at that time, Kalyan Singh, after he did not stand by his affidavit given by you in court. How important do you think lawyers? How important do you think it is for lawyers to draw such moral lines in professional spaces?
Because we have the right of the independence to decide whether we will appear in a case or not appear in a case. And therefore, we should exercise that independence depending upon whether you believe that so far as a case is concerned, it is something which you should appear in and put over to the court. Now, for example, in the Babri Masjid case, I was misled by my client, Kalyan Singh. He told me specifically that I will not allow the car sevaks to come cross that bridge and demolish the Babri Masjid. Similarly, in the I remember in the Justice Krishna telling me when I appeared against the scheduled castes in regard to promotions, he turned to me and said, Venugopal, you have to pay for what you have done for the last 5,000 years to the scheduled castes. Therefore, I got a shock because what did I do 5,000 in the 5,000 years back? But Krishna's manner of putting over a question to make it as effective as possible was to say 5,000 years. But what he meant was that we, the non-scheduled castes, had oppressed the scheduled castes for centuries. And they were struggling to attain a iota of equality with the rest of the communities, that is the non-backward classes. And if you still appeared against them and said that you cannot give them promotions by giving them 5 extra marks, then he said, you have punished them enough in the past. Therefore, please do not do this. And from that day onwards, I had never appeared. And this was 30 years, 40 years back. I had never appeared against the scheduled caste in any case.
There is a moral line that you drew,
Yes.
which you think is very important for lawyers today to draw, as you have mentioned in your book as well.
Yes.
Coming to the last question, since we are celebrating Women's Day now, where do you think that the judiciary is falling short for women? And what would you like to see in the coming years, both from the bar and the bench, in terms of bettering things for women, not just in terms of representation, but also in terms of equal stature?
See, during the past few years, from 1984 onwards, ever since Dr. N.R. Madhav Menon started the National University in Bangalore, maintaining a very high standard. Now we have got about 18 or 19 national law universities. They turn out lawyers of excellence who are in a position to argue cases the very next year after we get enrolled. And I'm surprised to find watching the young lawyers arguing that the women lawyers in the Supreme Court are as good as the male lawyers. They're excellent. Now, in which event, why on earth do you find only one woman judge on the bench of the Supreme Court, Justice Nagaratnam? There should be, according to me, if not an equal number, at least nearly an equal number, because they have as much talent, as much knowledge, and I find they are arguing as well as any senior lawyer even. And therefore, there is, I think, a mindset under which there is a feeling that women lawyers will not make good judges, women lawyers will not make good lawyers. But three of my former juniors, women lawyers, have all been designated as senior advocates by the Supreme Court of India. Why have they been designated? Because they are made of excellent stuff and they're able to argue their cases with great confidence and win their cases, just as male lawyers. Therefore, I feel that the male lawyers, I do not say that it's a patriarchy or whatever it is. I mean, that will be very, very strong. But some or other, the faith that they should have in women lawyers, if they find they are of equal capacity, that faith is not there. And therefore, the women lawyers suffer. And you do not find, you find, as I said, 1 out of 32, 34 judges in the Supreme Court.
So you have also mentioned in your book regarding your late wife also appearing next to you in courts. Could you tell us something more about how you have found working with women? Like, what about the social structure is it that affects them? Why are we still plagued with the question from the last 30, 40 years, if not more, regarding the representation bit and also not giving, them having enough work?
After we got married, my wife appeared online and got her bachelor's degree. Thereafter, she went to the law college in Madras, sat with the old, much younger women, and got her law degree. After that, she was coming with me to the court, and that's what she wanted. She wanted to share my life as a lawyer. And I given the example, the story of Subrata Roy Chowdhury, who was a brilliant lawyer of the highest stature in West Bengal, in Calcutta. And when I was appearing against Indira Gandhi, she was and appearing for the government of India as additional Solicitor General in 1976. My wife was sitting in her robes behind me, and Subrata called the pressmen who were present and said, "Who is the person sitting behind? It's his wife. And you're not mentioning her name. Every day you say K.K. Venugopal argued. K.K. Venugopal could not have argued unless she had instructed him sufficiently, and therefore put her name in future." And every day thereafter, what was appearing in the newspapers was K.K. Venugopal, instructed by Mrs. Shanta Venugopal.
All right. Thank you so much, sir, for
All
joining
right.
us. Thank you so much for joining us today. For more from The Print, subscribe to The Print.